Welcome to the Virtual Strategic Solutions Virtual Reality Simulation System. Accessing Legacy Dataset. Files loaded. Simulation ready. Blue Ridge's history is closely tied to Joanna Mayfield's family, which shipped cargo across Appalachia for at least 3 generations, primarily along the Blue Ridge Parkway. Inheriting the company from her grandfather around 2073, Mayfield continued the tradition, managing a fleet of 18-wheeled trucks across Appalachian highways and beyond. The Great War forced a change in operation, but did not manage to destroy the company. Switching trucks for hardy brahmin, Mayfield founded the Blue Ridge Caravan Company to once again connect the world together. Over the next 25 years, she built it up into a large merchant company with operations across the East Coast, primarily the Blue Ridge Parkway, though some merchants come from as far away as Kentucky. Mayfield relied a great deal on her pre-war associates in the process, the most important of whom is Vinnie Costa. With ties to pre-war organized crime and a group of reliable men at his disposal, Mayfield made sure to keep him from being tempted to fall back into old bad habits after the war, earning his loyalty. He credits her exceptional management skills for the company's success. Other members of Blue Ridge Company were recruited in the course of expanding operations, including the aforementioned Kentucky Trappers and Minerva, who originally apprenticed with a bookseller working for Blue Ridge. Many come to regard their fellow employees not just as business partners, but family, always looking out for each other. In 2103, after the scorched plague was finally contained by Vault 76 dwellers and humans started to return to Appalachia, Blue Ridge expanded as well. Vinnie Costa set up a base camp at the eastern end of the Big Bend Tunnel, steadily carving a path into western Appalachia and established trade routes. Though plagued by blood eagles and considered one of the most dangerous routes operated by Blue Ridge, it is at the same time the safest option to get past the Allegheny Mountains. Overland travel is not just slow, but leaves the caravans much more exposed than crossing the train tunnel. While the expansion was successful, and Blue Ridge managed to secure both ends of the tunnel, making inroads into Appalachia, and even set up checkpoints throughout the tunnel, it wasn't without its problems. Blood eagles constantly attacked the tunnel, targeting the checkpoints and caravans crossing through. However, the biggest problem came with a string of mysterious disappearances from among Blue Ridge clients, tied to the Harpers Ferry tunnel route used by the company to safely transport people across the Blue Ridge and the Potomac into Appalachia. The company shut down and sealed up the tunnels after the disappearances. Mayfield tried to keep the situation under wraps to avoid spooking the culprit or tarnishing the Blue Ridge name. The secrecy attracted the attention of the Brotherhood 1st Expeditionary Force under Paladin Layla Rahmani. The Paladin attempted to contact Blue Ridge repeatedly in the hopes of trading supplies, but was ignored every time. When Art Knapp arrived at Fort Atlas, and the new initiates turned up an apparently incriminating letter, Rahmani decided to investigate more deeply. While trying to investigate the matter incognito, Rahmani was immediately made by Mayfield, who decided to meet the Brotherhood leader in person. Blue Ridge's own investigation of their records showed a clear pattern of disappearances, but nothing that would tie them in common. The meeting between Rahmani and Mayfield was strained, due to the former suspecting the latter of human trafficking and the latter suspecting the former of trying to interfere with Blue Ridge for their own benefit. They settled on a joint investigation of the last lost caravan in the Harpers Ferry rail tunnel, formerly used as one of Blue Ridge's caravan routes. Ultimately, however, the group found the caravan stop and uncovered evidence identifying Edgar Blackburn and the Hellcat Company as parties responsible for the mass kidnapping, clearing Blue Ridge's name. While Mayfield remained wary of the Brotherhood, she was satisfied with the outcome and remained in Appalachia. Much of her disdain stemmed from her pride in what Blue Ridge achieved and what she and her caravaneers built up, and unwillingness to simply let a paramilitary outfit claim a slice of the pie and dictate what her caravan company can and can't do. The company's operations grew in 2104, with Blue Ridge establishing a pit stop at the abandoned Middle Mountain cabins. Now called the Middle Mountain Pit Stop, it was set up to act as a major stopover point for caravans and travelers. They also made contact with the new responders under Rucker, adding to their already impressive network of contacts in Appalachia. Blue Ridge may shift from expanding to strengthening its position, as the constant expansion has spread the company out and it's starting to weaken. Mayfield has decided to put a stop to further expansion and focus on putting roots down, in Appalachia in particular. Survey reports by Vinnie Costa suggested this might be the best course, as there's nothing in the north due to the proximity of the pit and unspecified burned bridges closer to the coast, while the infrastructure of the national parks to the south has attracted a lot of danger, rendering it unprofitable. Finally, the Ohio River is impassable due to the cult of the Mothman blocking the Silver Bridge, and there's a lack of reliable routes through the mire and over the Potomac, limiting the company's options. The company employs a permanent cadre of caravan guards who protect merchants contracting with the company for protection in exchange for a generous commission. Every merchant operates their own supply chains and the related overhead, with Blue Ridge responsible for transporting goods and protecting the merchants, enabling Blue Ridge to offer a broad range of goods, including arms and ammunition, blueprints and schematics, furs, furniture, water, and more. Guards and merchants usually operate in pairs, with additional hands and guards hired as needed. Guards and merchants are paired as needed, though most merchants have their preferred guards with whom they develop rapport and bond together. Blue Ridge is considered by some to be more than business partners, even family, and Mayfield's care to ensure fair division of labor and adequate rest is vital. However, at the end of the day, it remains a business relationship, and if circumstances change, Vinnie Costa won't hesitate to raise the prices for caravan protection services. Free agents are typically disadvantaged, since they usually don't provide potential openings for onboarding additional merchants or opening up markets. Caravan guards are also expected to purchase their supplies from within the Blue Ridge network, with reprimands and roster shakeups being the usual response if one deals with outside parties. This manner of organization has paid dividends. By 2104, Blue Ridge operates across a large part of the former eastern United States. While it primarily does business along the Blue Ridge Parkway, it has merchants from as far west as Kentucky, and at least one pair, Minerva and Tommy Ten Toes, traveled as far south as Chattanooga in former Tennessee. The operation in Appalachia around Big Bend Tunnel is just the latest expansion, significantly shortening the distance across the Allegheny Mountains by directly bridging Ash Heap and Cranberry Bog. It is of special importance as Mayfield switched to the slower but ultimately most resilient brahmin due to the rapidly deteriorating state of the roads and the nuclear engines powering the vehicles. As a result, the bovines receive absolute priority, thanks to their ability to carry heavy loads unhindered over long distances. Joanna prioritized self-sufficiency above all else, rejecting offers of collaboration from paramilitary groups to maintain independence. While she jokes about refusing raises to contractors, she pays them well, to the point that Kieran Kennedy could afford to hire a live-in guard for his adopted family. She also does not tolerate intimidation of her employees as a means to an end. Joanna has a good eye for people, keeping close tabs on her head of operations, Vinnie Costa, to keep him on the straight and narrow, setting aside toys to gift to Kieran's children, and making sure that Libby Wen and Carver Timmerman do not burn themselves out while doing runs for the company. By 2103, the company was ready to expand north into West Virginia, thanks to the containment of the scorched plague and humanity returning once more to the region. Vinnie Costa spearheaded the initial push into the region, setting up operations centered around the Big Bend Tunnel, providing a more or less safe route beneath the mountains and providing access to the western parts of Appalachia. Joanna planned for a visit to the region once operations were underway. A year later, she finally arrived, setting up an office at the western end of the tunnel in order to investigate a string of disappearances tied to Blue Ridge operations. Overall, under Joanna's leadership, Blue Ridge as a company has operated smoothly, something that Vinnie Costa recognizes as a comfortable normalcy. Vinnie has known Joanna Mayfield since well before the Great War, during the company's heyday trucking goods through the Blue Ridge Parkway, and is in fact one of the few who can call her by the nickname Joe. He will even compromise and do favors for her, like posting Vera Thornburg at the Middle Mountain pit stop, as she pulled him out of his old life and helped him find a way forward, abandoning the temptations of the mob lifestyle for a position as Blue Ridge's head of operations. Vinnie Costa has been involved in organized crime since before the bombs dropped, and brought some members of his former crew on board after the apocalypse. Kieran Kennedy and Tommy Ten Toes are two of these former associates, and Vinnie has explicitly forbidden them from speaking about the past. Additionally, he regards connecting Blue Ridge up north near the coast to be a waste of time due to too many burned bridges there. There is some friction. Aside from morale issues that cropped up during the stay in Appalachia, he also has his nephew, Luca, to take care of. As much as he loves him, Luca doesn't get a free ride on account of blood ties, but has issues pulling his weight. Vinnie also has to deal with Aries, whom he considers a freak and does not enjoy dealing with him, on account of his flippant attitude and constant mocking, not sparing Vinnie's baldness, which is a major source of embarrassment for him. However, Vinnie does not pull rank, as he is first and foremost a businessman who looks out for the interests of his company. Appalachia turned out to be a gold mine for Blue Ridge. As they are one of the only outside sources of trade goons, the supplies they bring through Big Bend can reach Foundation, the Crater, and many more smaller settlements, then sell for a high price. Even raiders give them safe passage, with the noted exception of the Blood Eagles. While Blue Ridge has secured both sides of the Big Bend tunnel, the tunnel itself is plagued by constant attacks, and security posts established within are frequently taken down in the process. Vinnie relies on his guard cadre to keep the merchants safe, which also makes him extremely concerned about their morale and well-being. While he will hire people to fix the morale issues, due to his position as manager, he will not think twice about exploiting the information provided for the benefit of the company, such as greatly increasing the commission for Eugenie, if informed that she is sourcing her stock independently, rather than the compound Joanna was hoping to establish a trade route to, or punishing Libby Wen by posting her to a safe, boring trade route, if told that she is sourcing her spare parts from non-Blue Ridge traders. He does have a softer side. He has much more patience with Kieran, his former associate, even if he disapproves of his life choices, establishing and looking after his family, and is quite protective of Carver Timmerman. He sees the makings of a capable merchant in the young Timmerman, and would like to help him step into adulthood. However, while Vinnie will pay a contractor, he will not use company assets to solve the problem for him. Vinnie is not on great terms with everyone in his team, but it is not something that bothers him as long as they do their job right. His preference for short, to-the-point communication leads to some issues being ignored or misinterpreted. Rudy Fernandez believes that Vinnie is not as focused on the good of the company as he declares to be, as while he pays a generous bonus for lost cargo recovered from Big Bend, the merchandise is not returned to the merchants. Rudy feels it suggests Vinnie runs a business on the side, selling the loot himself. The latest problems for Vinnie, beyond morale, is the future of Blue Ridge. He is starting to see wisdom in Joanna's decision to focus on strengthening their position and consolidating their power. The more Blue Ridge spreads out, the weaker it gets, and with the roots growing ever more dangerous, the future is very much in flux. With other settlements building up in Appalachia, Vinnie is starting to realize that Blue Ridge similarly placing down roots in the area could be a smart move. Johnny Bills has been working with Blue Ridge since its days as a pre-war trucking company and was hired by Joanna Mayfield's grandfather. Before the bombs dropped, Johnny received his nickname due to his high debts and the bills he owed others. Although his debts were eliminated in the apocalypse, Johnny still prefers this being a secret, and he enjoys telling others he used to be a millionaire instead, though he does not get upset if someone sees through his bit. His number one tip for survival in the wasteland is to try to cooperate with other people and to participate in trade, as commerce is still king. Johnny is well aware of the power of caps to transcend inter-faction disagreements, which he makes references to in a sarcastic fashion. While off duty, Bills once went on a caravan trip coordinated by Blue Ridge and guarded by Libby Wen. It was the second caravan in which Edgar Blackburn joined the group. As of 2105, Johnny considers himself too old and not fit enough to guard caravans by himself anymore. but he still takes the opportunity to share his knowledge and experiences with younger caravanners. His assignment at the Blue Ridge bunkhouse still has him handling shipments alongside other Blue Ridge workers, and he will even offer some odds and ends to sell, although he will direct those looking to do major trading toward Foundation and the crater. Johnny is partial toward the settlers of Foundation, though he does see them as rather naive. He also recommends stopping by and visiting the charitable responders at the White Spring Refuge. He also sees the crater as a decent place to potentially earn a profit, if one has the necessary grit to deal with the crater raiders, otherwise they may lose much more. However, Johnny strongly recommends against dealing with the Brotherhood 1st Expeditionary Force at Fort Atlas, and he is not fond of them at all. As Joanna Mayfield has cautioned against interacting with them, Johnny believes the Brotherhood to be bad news. Born before the Great War to Gregory and Deborah Timmerman in Lewisburg, Carver is a young man with a complex family history. Deborah's father ran an interior decorating business, working closely with Van Lowe Taxidermy. The relationship continued after she married Gregory and inherited the business. The relationship took on a new dimension when Deborah and Shelley Van Lowe, owner of the taxidermy shop, developed feelings for each other since at least January 2076, developing into love with the tacit acceptance of Gregory. Carver does not remember anything from Lewisburg, as he was merely an infant when Shelley's brother, Calvin Van Lowe, abruptly returned and then suddenly disappeared, with the Great War following. While Greg, Deborah and Shelley tried to survive in Lewisburg, the ash heap's environment was too poisonous for humans, especially the young and sickly Carver. He was losing weight rapidly and developed a severe cough by mid-November, leading Deborah to ask Shelley for help. Coupled with the recent disappearance of Gregory on a supply run, they had little reason to stay and moved on to Kentucky, where they found a new life and set up a business dealing in furs and furniture. Carver grew up in Kentucky, or what was once Kentucky. Carver himself is unsure, as while he studied geography as a child, it feels like a waste of time to him as an adult, under the care of his two mothers, with Shelley effectively adopting him as her own child. All he knows of his father are the scant few mentions of Gregory from Deborah. This ignorance led to curiosity, then an identity crisis, and a haunting need to know more about where he comes from and who he is. Suffering from a long-lasting identity crisis, Carver's self-esteem and confidence suffered, affecting him all the way into adulthood. While he dearly loves both of his mothers, especially Shelley, whose courage and strength he admires, he does wish he had more family to help him find a proper sense of self, or at the very least learn something more about his lost father. Carver would get a chance to fulfill his wish in 2103, as Blue Ridge Caravan Company expanded into Appalachia. With Deborah sick and unable to work the caravan trail, and Shelley occupied with sourcing furs for their outfit, Carver was pressed into the role of a merchant. Nervous, unsure of himself, and considered fragile even by the head of the company, Carver had to adapt and work the trail. The desire to know more about his father intensified with his proximity to Lewisburg, eating away at him. However, Vinnie Costa, the head of operations, would never spare guards for a personal errand. Vinnie actually sees that Carver has the makings of a capable worker, but simply needs help to step into the role. Vinnie is unaware of the struggle within Carver, but has noticed that Carver is distracted and liable to halt all of his shipments until he figures himself out. While he has pieced together that something more was going on between the three than either Deborah or Shelley told him, Carver is non-judgmental. Insulting his family over their relationship is a surefire way to gain Carver's ire, or at least make him try and stand up for them. However, it is learning about his father and his last hours that truly helps Carver find himself and the confidence he so desperately needs. He has difficulty finding common ground elsewhere, including other men. He tried talking with Kieran Kennedy about his father, but Kieran gruffly told him that your past is not who you are. You are not just your father's son, you are yourself first, which did little to inspire confidence or reduce Carver's anxiety about his identity. Similarly, Vinnie is intimidating to the young Timmerman. While technically he is not his boss and Blue Ridge works for the merchants, Carver cannot help but see Vinnie as a superior and fears disapproval or trouble the most. However, Vinnie pales in comparison with Ares. Carver is unaware that Aries' gas mask conceals his step-uncle, the long-lost Calvin Van Lowe. As a result, Carver finds Aries' antics scary and believes they mean that Aries considers him a pathetic weakling and a loser. He even unsuccessfully petitioned Joanna Mayfield to avoid pairing him with Aries on caravan runs. Aries simply freaks Carver out, although should Carver discover the family connection, he is surprised but happy and finds a sense of connection with him. The opposite situation occurred with Libby Wen, a Blue Ridge guard. Carver has a crush on Libby and has actually asked Vinny to be paired with her on runs, even going as far as suggesting he's ready to do back-to-back runs to convince him. Vinny paired Libby and Carver together, but mentioned this to Libby. Libby confronted Carver on the trail during a slow moment. Neither shaming nor humiliating him, she explained that she is the wrong person, a caravan run is the wrong time for a date, and going behind her back with Vinny was the absolute worst way to arrange one. At the same time, she did not shut him down, treating it as an unfortunate screw-up, but allowing Carver to start over once he got over it. Eugenie is a client and merchant of the Blue Ridge Caravan Company at Big Bend Tunnel East. Born and raised near Appalachia, Eugenie survived the Great War, but was exposed to enough radiation to trigger ghoulification. Forced to leave her fellow survivors, she dodged bigots for years, evading attempts to kill her just for who she became. Eventually, she joined a group of like-minded ghouls, living in a commune for almost a decade. While safe, she felt that she was stuck there for a decade, afraid to venture out. She finally got up and decided to take her chances, gathering supplies, caps, and venturing out to become a merchant. As it turned out, coming into town with goods is an excellent way to make people talk to ghouls, and the firepower she carries ensures they stay civilized. Eventually, she contracted the Blue Ridge Caravan Company for protection, making regular runs through the Big Bend Tunnel, ferrying weapons, ammunition, and explosives. The company believes her to still be closely tied to the compound, and Joanna Mayfield would like nothing more than Eugenie recruiting more traders for Blue Ridge, on top of the generous commission Eugenie provides. As a result, she receives preferential rates, as free agents have to pay significantly more. In reality, Eugenie has moved out of the compound and set up her own network of contacts to source her wares from. However, she remains in touch with the ghouls at the compound through letters. Though they are simple updates on what is going on in the compound, she treasures them as a reminder that she can always come back. While her fellow ghouls do miss her greatly, she is reluctant to return and sell for them again. She prefers being her own boss. Luca is the nephew of Vinny Costa. Although now an adult, he appears to have been born either shortly before or after the Great War. Luca mentions that as a child he once tried to befriend a Mirelurk he named Scuttles, but it did not go well, and the Mirelurk died. Luca only recently started residing with his uncle Vinny, saying that he has been staying with him a little while. As a result, Luca has been trying to find ways to contribute to the Blue Ridge Caravan Company, for which Vinny works as a manager. While Luca finds that being Vinny's nephew has its perks, as no one wants to start shit with the boss's relative, he also mentions that Vinny does not baby him and expects him to pull around his own weight. Although he does acknowledge that his Uncle Vinny can appear frightening, Luca believes that Vinny is not actually scary. He just seems tough. He even says that Vinny is actually pretty cool. That said, Luca does still want to avoid Vinny's wrath if at all possible, if he screws something up. Vinny, for his part, sees his nephew as an occasional nuisance with problems that can only be solved by a boot up his ass, but the two are still family, and any rifts between them are part of being related, and will always work themselves out. One source of conflict between Luca and Vinny is the role that Luca plays at Blue Ridge. Luca struggles to find ways to help out with the company, though he does frequently join the caravans on their various trips. However, Luca has recently found a niche of creating homemade explosives to sell. This initially stemmed from a hobby interest in chemistry, but he found that he was bad at making things that did not blow up. Luca markets them as a multi-purpose item to use against hostiles or even for home renovations and landscaping. However, Vinny is greatly concerned about the quality of the product and refuses to officially sell them on Blue Ridge's books. Although Luca insists that his explosives are up to par, Vinny wants to avoid any mishaps, as accidental detonations would look bad on the business. Vinny dismisses them as homemade cherry bombs, but Luca continues to sell them off the books as he aspires to have Vinny officially distribute his explosives. While in the bog, Luca encountered a group of traders, unaware that they were Cult of the Mothman members in disguise. Led by Elder Adelaide, the cultists tricked Luca by arranging a trade deal with him, upon which they ambushed him and seized his crude bombs, as well as his pack brahmin, Mona Lisa. The proceedings of the event Beasts of Burden see the Vault 76 dwellers assisting an injured Luca, fighting back against the cultists, retaking the bombs via Mona Lisa and escaping the bog, even as an Ogwa appears to attack. Although he initially naively attempts to take credit for the escape, Luca quickly realizes his mistake and says he owes the dwellers, offering them cheers for their help the next time they see each other. Rudy Fernandez grew up in a family of Mexican descent who own a cannery and bakery a few days' worth of travel from Appalachia. In his childhood, Rudy cooked with his grandmother, Abuela, who had a special recipe for pozole, a traditional Mexican soup stew. However, she died before the Great War. The Fernandez cannery, which he compares to Mama Dolce's food processing, is currently run by Rudy's brothers, including owner F. Fernandez, who has accompanied Rudy on at least one caravan. Rudy used to work at the plant, though he mostly just hung around and told jokes, self-appointing himself as the Director of Morale Enhancement. At some point after the Great War, the Fernandez family hired the Blue Ridge Caravan Company to protect the shipments and cargo out of the cannery. Afterward, Rudy's brothers designated him as their man on the road. This new job for Rudy has kept him at Big Bend Tunnel in Appalachia, selling canned goods, water, and family recipes to prospective clients. While working with Blue Ridge, Rudy has kept his role as resident comedian alongside running deliveries and selling special food items like pepperoni rolls, the latter of which he will talk about at length. During caravans through Big Bend Tunnel, Rudy is often paired with Aries as his guard. Rudy likes Aries, but is frequently perturbed by his macabre personality. Rudy will ask the Vault 76 dwellers to seek out the ingredients he needs for the pozole, so that it can be taste-tested and eventually added to his list of wares. Rudy cannot go out himself due to his responsibilities at Big Bend Tunnel, and funding a caravan for a shopping trip would rack up fees and upset his brothers. After the ingredients are gathered and Rudy makes the stew, the Vault dwellers can sample the pozole and offer their opinion on it. He will be emotional and thankful if told that the pozole would make his abuela proud. If he is told that the pozole is too burnt, he will panic and attempt to market it as lightly barbecued. Regardless, Rudy will refine the recipe and begin selling it. Even if a lightly barbecued label does not work out, Rudy also sends the recipe and pozole back home to his brothers. Rudy says that it is not quite how they remembered it, but still made them nostalgic. However, Rudy's brothers rebuffed his subsequent request to return to work at the cannery. Rudy was just happy to make them laugh. The daughter of a pre-war trucker who worked for Joanna Mayfield, Vera Thornburg is a newly minted caravan worker, assigned to take care of the Middle Mountain pit stop by Vinny Costa. While inexperienced, she is responsible for a vital part of Blue Ridge's operations in Appalachia, raising brahmin for use on the caravan trail, in addition to running the general store and looking after the stop. She has a limited knowledge of the pre-war world, despite her father's stories, including a lack of clarity on what bed and breakfast means, although it also leads her to unorthodox solutions, such as creating ice cream by freezing brahmin milk with cryolators. She actually got the job through her father's connection to Joanna, and her placement at the pit stop was a favor to Joanna from Vinny. She found the job exciting initially, as she and Clyde set up the pit stop, burying the dead and setting up the bar, store, and the rest stop. She considered it a new start, and soon kept quite busy with caring for the brahmin and serving travelers and fellow workers, including Luca Costa, Vinny's nephew, and Graham. However, it left little time for anything else, and eventually, mistakes started to pop up, ranging from relatively mild splashing of milk across her terminal to losing track of her herd, or dumping the day's earnings into the outhouse. The reason for her distraction is simple. She assumed that being a caravan worker would have involved traveling rather than working the pit stop in a seemingly endless loop of chores. As she grew up on her father's stories about being a trucker, listening to his sage advice, for example, it ain't about the destination, but the pit stops along the way. And all night hauling on the road, she feels stuck and a disappointment to her father. She wanted to share her travels with him, attaching photos of the places she visited across Appalachia, and this wanderlust has been distracting her, resulting in mistakes. Vinny has noticed the change and would like someone to fix the issue promptly, without violence, as his hide is on the line with Joanna if anything happens to Vera. Between her father eagerly waiting to hear about her travels and the pit stop, she is very distracted. The situation is further complicated by the fact that the brahmin at the pit stop attract various predators, and Vinny rebuffed Vera's suggestion to hire more guards for the pit stop, or turning the brahmin into battle cattle with armor. To combat this, Aries and Clyde have improvised a repeller system that uses sound waves largely outside the range of human hearing to keep the animals at bay. However, the system malfunctions sometimes and attracts fauna rather than repelling it. As a result, the Vault 76 dwellers have to lend a hand every now and then to keep the wildlife contained. If they do not, Vera and Clyde evacuate the pit stop and return with the herd to Big Bend Tunnel, with Vinny none too pleased with the turn of events. While she was still alive, her mother taught her a number of things about the brahmin, including her view that each head is its own individual. As such, she continues the tradition by giving each a pair of names, passing them to new brahmin whenever they are replaced by Blue Ridge. The replacement takes place once the brahmin are fully raised by Vera, with her jokingly calling the moment graduation and passing the name to new calves when the grown brahmin are taken onto the caravan trail. She does not mind taking care of the cattle, although she hates the muck, but would prefer to be on the caravan trail. Herschel Klein serves as a bartender for the Blue Ridge Caravan Company's bar at the western entrance to the Big Bend Tunnel, though he also claims to be an author, an aspiring playwright, and a reveler of life. According to Vinny Costa, Herschel simply showed up one day and has worked for Blue Ridge ever since, as Vinny is more than happy to let Herschel's bar collect more revenue for the company. Although Herschel's eccentricities have occasionally gained Vinny's ire, Herschel is still a good bartender who can pour an exceptional drink, and as such is tolerated by his co-workers at Blue Ridge. As a bartender, Herschel also trades rumors and often outright embellishments. Some of his outlandish rumors include that the Brotherhood of Steel is actually a traveling theater troupe with members coming all the way from Florida, that everyone is actually just in a memory lounger simulation in Hoboken, New Jersey, that Ares is an alien stuck after his spaceship was destroyed during the Great War, that the raiders in the crater are actually astronauts that came down with the space station, that becoming a ghoul is actually a side effect of excessive Nuka-Cola consumption, and that an intelligent society of mole rats thrives beneath Appalachia. Though bartending is his primary focus as his day-to-day job, Herschel is serious about his writing aspirations, if in his own strange way. He is saddened by the fact that more people are not interested in his work and claims to be working on an autobiography, My Life at the End of the World, a Herschel Klein story, with a foreword by the Mr. Handy Billingsley from Bolton Greens. To regain his motivation, Herschel asks the vault dwellers to investigate one of the many rumors he has heard. Herschel has heard of a supposed ghostly writer named Jacques haunting the Torrance house. Herschel wants to read Jacques' writing to gain inspiration for his own works, so that he may share Herschel's brilliance and beauty with the world. Although Herschel is aware that the story of Jacques may sound as ridiculous as his other rumors, it does turn out to have a nugget of truth in it, if slightly misguided. Jacques is actually a protectron who produced a series of jeering notes directed at a blood eagle named Striker. If told about Jacques, Herschel will express surprise at both of the facts that the writings were real and were actually produced by a robot, though he says the latter should be kept between him and the vault dwellers. Alternatively, if Herschel is lied to and made to believe that the ghost is real, he will be intrigued and joke about the prospect of a ghostwriter, and Vinny remarks that Herschel has started to have conversations with thin air, though he still bartends just fine. Either way, Herschel becomes reinvigorated and resumes work on his writings, as well as serving drinks without complaint. A former associate of Vinnie Costa, Clyde is a man of many talents, working at the pit stop together with his business partner, Vera Thornburg. While he is typically found manning the boozing brahmin counter and serving drinks to the clientele, he is also responsible for maintenance, especially the repeller emitters installed by Aries that frequently malfunction. Finally, he takes care of security, which typically means dealing with the various ornery critters that make their way into the compound and menace the brahmin or Vera. He is a man of 0 words on account of losing his tongue. His co-workers are not clear on what happened to him, and rumors abound, ranging from it being cut off by raiders to a bad bowl of radscorpion stew. In reality, the incident is tied to Clyde escaping from a raider gang, and as such he is not keen on sharing. While Vera states that Clyde is actually a big softy beneath his hardened exterior, he does not seem entirely fond of her, considering her a chica yammering on about her padre's letter, and as such refuses to accompany her on any trips to take the photos Vera needs. He also refuses to use a notepad to communicate, despite Vera's insistence, leading to misunderstandings. He never explained his reasons to her, and eventually she just assumed that maybe it's too much to expect literacy from wastelanders. Like many others, Clyde struggles with his own demons. The very first customer at the boozing brahmin he served was one of the only survivors of the super mutant attack on the Foundation outpost, ragged, stinking, and seeking to drown his memories. It seems he reminded Clyde of his own past as a raider, and his determination to keep going and not let his past life drive him crazy. The gang that Clyde was part of were extreme, even by raider standards, and though he lost a part of himself in the process, he's glad he got out. He has also had an encounter with the Smiling Man, a terrifying cryptid who visited his bar and sat for hours, staring into the flames. Ultimately, Clyde would like nothing more to be out in Appalachia with the Vault 76 dwellers, but cannot leave his current job due to being indebted to Vinnie Costa. He is, however, on one outside assignment. Aries has paid Clyde to investigate the origins of the Blue Devil, and Clyde has produced a report of his findings. Aries wants Clyde to accompany him on a hunting trip to find a mother creature, but it is not known what came of this proposal. A gruff man of few words, Kieran is an old associate of Vinnie Costa from before the Great War. They have known each other for some 30 years, since at least 2074, and Kieran has apparently been a grim, frowning man just as long. Kieran alludes to a similarly grim childhood. He says that while growing up, he had few chances to be a kid, and as a result has very little knowledge of what it means to have a childhood, and even less of what it means to have fun. His strong suit is violence. He's exceptionally strong and still in excellent physical condition despite his age, working under Vinnie as a caravan guard for the Blue Ridge Caravan Company. He's not quick to anger, but anyone testing his patience with insults might get to learn if he can truly rip out their tongue through their belly button, according to Vinnie. While Kieran tried numerous other jobs in the past, they did not pan out, and he always returned to what he knew best. He has a no-nonsense attitude towards work, focusing on the objectives first and any extra opportunities second. Although it is not specified exactly what jobs he did for Vinnie, Kieran is more than just a hired gun. He has some knowledge of handling explosive charges and can bring down blockades without killing the caravan or bringing the Big Bend tunnel down whenever the Blood Eagles try to block Blue Ridge from crossing. He also easily picks out enemy commanders and understands the reasons for bothering with the tunnel in the first place, such as the lack of cover when going overland or using the tunnel to neutralize enemy number advantage. This is particularly important whenever the caravan comes under heavy attack in confined spaces, as Kieran's calm, collected attitude and quick orders allow for immediate reaction to changing circumstances. Kieran is usually paired with Eugenie, a ghoul weapons merchant, making regular runs with premium armaments and ammunition through Big Bend. The talkative, sociable trader could not be more different from Kieran, and while she has complained at times about his gruff nature and tendency towards responding in a combination of sighs and monosyllabics, the two have developed a rapport. Joanna Mayfield respects him as a dependable worker and is familiar with his family situation, even going as far to set aside toys for them. Kieran started a family, adopting at least 5 children and setting up a homestead, though Vinny warned him he was not cut out for the family life. The adopted children run the homestead on their own, protected by Dorothy, a guard hired by Kieran to keep them safe whenever he is away earning caps. Dorothy is practically part of the family, all of whom stay in touch with Kieran through letters. While Kieran provides his adopted family with caps, food and safety, he is concerned that he should provide more than that. The Great War and the fallout that followed may have robbed them of their chance at a childhood, but he is unsure he should keep it that way. Nuka World on Tour seems like an opportunity to give them a bit of the childhood back, even if Kieran is well aware Appalachia is too dangerous for them to visit. He hopes to bring home a couple of souvenirs, to bring out some of the childlike wonder. At the same time, he is worried that souvenirs would only remind them of the fact they cannot visit the carnival, and of a world destroyed by their parents' generation, and that this would only end up making them sadder. The alternative is to prepare them for reality and the grim world they are facing. However, as Kieran admits, he may be overthinking it a fair bit. While there are no kids at the Appalachian Caravan Camp, Kieran does get to try at being a parental figure. Carver Timmerman struggles with not knowing his father well, and when he asked Kieran about it, he provided the best guidance he could. Your past is not who you are. You are not just your father's son, you are yourself first. Descended from an American military family of Chinese heritage, the dark-haired Libby is the daughter of a US Marine and a mother who also held a military job. As a result, living with him was like always being around a drill sergeant, even after the bombs dropped, with Mother being no different. Libby left home in order to pursue her own career, leaving her brother and sister to help at home. Since she was a lousy worker but a good shot, she figured she might as well get paid for it. The Wen family camp is located far from Appalachia, near the capital, and since finding work with Blue Ridge Caravan Company, she spends most of her time with the caravans. While she resents the atmosphere at home, comparable to a boot camp, rather than a family home, it has turned her into a professional warrior, calm and collected under fire, with caravan runs under her protection smoother than any other. She is Eugenie's favorite guard, though she's usually paired with Carver Timmerman, due to him requesting to Vinnie Costa to be put alongside Libby, promising to do double runs together. As part of the Blue Ridge contingent, Libby joins them in blazing trails into post-apocalyptic Appalachia to bring trade and commerce to survivors that resettled it after the scorched plague. Calm, focused, and utterly professional, Libby is used to fighting and death, perhaps a little too much for her own liking. Due to her young age, she is constantly underestimated and underappreciated by older members of the caravan, when in reality she is a veteran fighter trained by a Marine. At this point, anyone trying to mess around and joke about her age is liable to receive at least a stern lecture, in particular if they are not carrying out their duties properly. Libby immediately assumes command in these cases to salvage the situation, and always ensures her squad mates are doing their jobs correctly. Much of this is thanks to her family, down to the precise way she defines objectives and leads people entrusted to her care. Libby recognizes the irony and grudgingly admits that maybe she is a Marine after all. However, Libby is not as hard as she poses to be. Joanna Mayfield thinks that Libby is simultaneously tougher than she looks, but more vulnerable than she thinks. Libby keeps fond memories and anything that might change the way others look at her close to the chest, in particular the fact that she has named the rifle she uses, a gift from her grandfather. She considers Jarvie to be her lucky weapon, and an inseparable part of who she is. The name is taken from Jarvie Blake, a character from the Silver Shroud radio serial she used to listen to with her grandfather. Anyone who learns this secret might become Jarvie's next target if they spill the beans. Her relationship with Carver is a peculiar one. Due to his arrangement with Vinnie, Libby has been protecting Carver's caravan runs and dealing with his clumsy attempts at flirting. She does not believe she is the right woman for him, putting aside the fact a run through a raider-infested tunnel is not the time for courtship, but evidently has a soft spot for him. Whenever his attempts at flirt fall flat, she deftly pulls him out, rather than let him humiliate himself, and tries to encourage him to be more focused and hesitate less, a crucial issue on the caravan trail. She enjoys teasing and joking with him, even when it turns out he does not share her affinity for Blackwater brew, preferring Old Possum instead. Aries, formerly known as Calvin Cal Van Loo, is an employee of the Blue Ridge Caravan Company at Big Bend Tunnel. Before adopting a new identity as Aries and finding Blue Ridge, Calvin was a cryptid hunter, inventor, and engineer working for the Bish Company prior to the Great War. He currently resides in a decorated train car in front of Big Bend Tunnel East. He grew up in Lewisburg, West Virginia, where his parents ran Van Loo Taxidermy. His childhood was defined by small-town America and the shop. The siblings inherited the shop in the wake of their parents' passing. Shelley inherited the family business, though Calvin still maintained a residence and office in the building. Growing up, he became fearful about the idea of dying, particularly about him being forgotten, dying alone and having no friend to read his eulogy. His fear of death became a driving force and also led him to adopt a backup plan to record a series of holotapes to be his legacy. His sister considered him as always being the odd sort, but highly intelligent. In adolescence, he developed an obsession with cryptids, and later on co-founded a club with his friends Scott "Scoot" Conroy and Ray Gary, the Truth Seekers, devoted to hunting cryptids spotted in West Virginia. However, the group disbanded after Calvin enrolled in Vault-Tec University in August 2072, though his interest in cryptids never disappeared, and he continued his search for the sheep squatch, with which he had a particular fascination. He was a frequent buyer at Prebloss's Curios, a small store dedicated to selling cryptid merchandise, and was a friend of the owner, Raymond Priblo. He is said to have nearly bought the store's stock. Soon after graduation, he found work at a major out-of-state energy corporation, the Bish Company. While his mental acuity and cognitive skills were rated extremely high by professional psychologists at the company, they also observed that he suffered from a dissociative view of the social world and had limited ability to contextualize stimuli. He was also reported as experiencing frequent mood swings, indicative of non-functional interpersonal relationships and attachments to the contextualized world around him. In 2077, Calvin returned to Lewisburg. Instead of the controlled self his sister remembered from before his departure to Morgantown, he appeared to be the old, tormented Calvin again, going out in the middle of the night and locking himself away all day. He moved back into Van Loo Taxidermy, where he and Shelley shared a residence. His sister had doubts about whether Calvin was truly employed by Bish, or if he had just relapsed into his old habits. Calvin did in fact remain a Bish employee, though he was engaged in a far more sinister scheme. As Black Sheep, working under Bo Peep's handler, with Big Bad Wolf providing security, he was part of Operation Mary's Little Lamb, a corporate initiative to stage sheep squatch sightings around Lewisburg in order to drive property values down and allow the company to move in and buy up the devalued property. This way, the Bish Company could utilize Lewisburg to access a natural gas deposit underneath the town. As a local to Lewisburg, Bo Peep was enthusiastic about Calvin and pushed for the project, arranging for funds and necessary technology. While staying at his sister's home, Calvin sold the title to the taxidermy store to Bish behind Shelley's back, ensuring that they could build a sophisticated robotics lab into the foundations of the store in secret. The construction was rapid, finishing by September 27, 2077, and attracting only minor noise complaints from the neighbors. Calvin focused on the project, planning to use a disguised assaultron to stage a series of sightings on the western side of Lewisburg. He had moved into Van Loo's taxidermy to avoid raising his sister's suspicion, but the project started waking up old demons and feeding his obsession with the cryptids again. So much that he recorded a holotape to remind himself that the sheep squatch was not real. Another complication was that the technology provided by Bish was not up to snuff. The first assaultron was impossible to keep running, much less able to accommodate the custom routines necessary for the project. Calvin requested an upgraded robot from Bish, which provided a superior replacement that Calvin found perfect for his purposes. However, the sightings did not generate the public attention Calvin hoped for, causing him to resolve to be more aggressive. Though corporate fixer Big Bad Wolf remained skeptical of Calvin's projects, he continued to support the operations, as the company wanted any return on the investments made thus far. The lack of progress and demand for results compounded, leading to Calvin missing his scheduled check-in and receiving his first and only warning. Calvin was reminded of what the consequences were. A second failure to check in would result in the whole project being scrapped and the wolf cleaning up all traces of Bish's involvement. Frustrated by the threats, he resolved to make the Assaultron into a proper imposter sheepsquatch for extra authenticity. However, the damage was done, and even Bo Peep, once his advocate at Bishi, became concerned, especially after Wolf showed Calvin's psychiatric evaluation to her. She resolved to see the job through, believing that Calvin's new approach was pure science rather than social engineering. Calvin failed at the latter, but the former was playing to his strengths. Wolf arranged a meeting to receive a report in person, unaware that Calvin was about to make a grave mistake. The new approach required Calvin to make modifications to the Assaultron's core behavioral subroutines. Around October 18, 2077, Calvin started the process. Skipping through the manual and hastily signing liability waivers, Calvin inserted a holotape with the sheepsquatch behavior into the console, uploading it to the Assaultron. He then set the parameters for sheepsquatch mating rituals in an attempt to hasten finding the actual creature. However, the Assaultron identified the request as conflicting with the company's HR guidelines and promptly filed a report. Calvin reacted instantly, trying to execute an administrative override and preventing the company from being notified. Rather than override, the Assaultron understood the command as overwrite and asked for confirmation. Calvin confirmed the request, realizing too late that he was replacing the original Assaultron programming, overwriting it completely with the sheepsquatch personality. The robot mauled Calvin before escaping the shop into Appalachia. Its first steps led to Bastion Park, where Bo Peep met a grisly end, vaporized by the Assaultron's head laser. Calvin survived barely, with a damaged face, unable to walk, and with internal bleeding. His emergency stash of medical supplies saved his life, barely, and he started recording his legacy holotapes, Protocol Adonais. Unfortunately, he missed his second check-in, leading to the big bad wolf starting the cleanup. By the time Wolf arrived at the taxidermy shop, Calvin was gone, after he unsuccessfully tried to secure medical aid through Bish's network, only to be rejected. Rather than hunt him down, Wolf focused on recapturing the loose imposter sheepsquatch. Shelley Van Lowe, completely unaware of Calvin's work with Bish, filed a missing persons report. Any attempt at finding him was cut short by the Great War. Calvin survived, barely, hiding in uncanny caverns. He greeted the nuclear holocaust of the Great War with a recitation of Adonais by Percy Bysshe Shelley, before emerging into post-nuclear Appalachia. After the bombs settled, Shelley began circulating posters around Appalachia, hoping that someone would be able to bring her some closure with regards to what happened to her brother. Eventually, she gave up and moved on, settling in Kentucky. She left Calvin a note in case he returned. Calvin had other priorities, however. Although the wounds were slowly healing, he was in constant pain, pushing through the pain to talk. He moved north to Welch to try and find his old friend and fellow truth-seeker Ray Gary. He found him on the upper floor of Gary's home, badly injured in a wheelchair and lamenting his wife, Laura, having not returned from a scavenging trip. Slipping in and out of lucidity, Ray realized who Calvin was, happy to see his friend again after the bombs. Although he did not explicitly name the sheepsquatch, Ray said that it was real and had been what injured him. Calvin responded with a solemn, "I know." Unable to make Ray realize that Laura was gone, Calvin left Ray a bottle of whiskey and departed. Adopting a new name, Aries, Calvin left Appalachia, moving to Kentucky and starting work for an outfit known as the Blue Ridge Caravan Company. As a caravan guard, he was initially only assigned to the company's routes within Kentucky, but Aries returned to Appalachia around 2103 as Blue Ridge expanded operations into the area, now safe from the scorched plague. Aries developed a chipper, trickster-like persona over the decades since the Great War, in a complete change from the previous gloomy, brooding engineer he once was. The return to his home region certainly played a role, with Aries indulging in his penchant for drama, to the point that it astonished even Eugenie, who had known Aries since he started work in Kentucky. He still has an interest in all things cryptic, bizarre, and generally strange, though he keeps his obsessions under wraps with a healthy dose of humor. His encyclopedic knowledge of these topics makes him an odd but welcome addition to the team, while his insistence on wearing a mask all the time has led to good-natured ribbing. Herschel Klein jokingly theorizes that Aries is actually an alien stuck on Earth, forced to make caravan runs to make ends meet. In reality, Aries is neither an alien nor a ghoul, simply a scarred human. The mask is necessary to keep his injuries stable and help him breathe, as having his face ripped off left long-term damage he was unable to fix. The mask stabilizes his injuries and facilitates breathing, allowing him to work as a caravan guard like any other fighter. Years of difficulty breathing due to blood caked up in his throat became manageable, with the added bonus of becoming unrecognizable to any Bish robots. The encounter left him with a deep fear of killer robots, or former employees. Aries struggled the most with his legacy, in particular since his sister worked for the same caravan company he joined. It was a reason for him to stay, but he still struggled to figure out whether he should fade into obscurity or reveal himself to his family. Aries' return to Appalachia was a way to resolve his internal stalemate while making a positive impact on the world. Aries believes that positive change occurs despite the world's resistance to it, and that effort makes a difference, no matter how difficult it is at first. While Blue Ridge was busy blazing a trail into Appalachia through Big Bend Tunnel, Aries got the opportunity to provide more substantial aid. While he was technically just a caravan guard, his Bish credentials and knowledge were instrumental when Paladin Layla Rahmani of the Brotherhood 1st Expeditionary Force investigated a string of Wastelander disappearances. Aries was crucial in navigating the Harper's Ferry Tunnel where the disappearances occurred, which also happened to be used by Blue Ridge as a potentially safer alternative to other routes into Appalachia. Blue Ridge ceased using the tunnel, however, after a full caravan of about 15 people went missing en route, which alerted the Brotherhood. Paladin Rahmani suspected Blue Ridge of foul play, which was not helped by Aries' and Joanna Mayfield's reluctance to explain their role with the tunnel. Aries was a prime suspect, as he was involved in travel through the Harper's Ferry Tunnel until it was sealed up. Eventually, Joanna agreed to provide aid and ordered Aries to return to the tunnel with the Brotherhood and investigate it. The crime scene was sealed up thanks to Aries himself, who set off a bogus gas leak to seal the tunnel off. Although he never worked at the Harper's Ferry Tunnel specifically before the Great War, Aries' knowledge of Bish procedures and technology allowed the group to unseal the tunnel, albeit with some difficulty, and survive attacks by strangler-infested feral ghouls, granting them access to the deepest reaches of the infrastructure secretly built by Bisha to ship natural gas out of the region unnoticed. Rahmani's suspicion of Aries only grew the deeper they went, spurred on by Aries' eccentric antics, coupled with Bish's arcane security measures and a sheep-squatch mimicking a Soltron lurking in the tunnel. The latter in particular caused Aries' old demons to briefly resurface. Rahmani almost lashed out at Aries, suspecting an elaborate cover-up on part of Blue Ridge, though she relented when Aries finally led them to the caravan stop. Rahmani and her aide located enough intel to implicate Edgar Blackburn and Hellcat Company as major suspects, simultaneously clearing Blue Ridge's name. The Paladin apologized to Aries for jumping to conclusions, though she ruled out sharing Hellstorm launchers with him as compensation. Having contributed to saving Appalachia, Aries returned to making caravan runs with Blue Ridge and trying to decide his legacy. The first step was recovering his old Adonai's holotapes, tracking the major events in his life from the mauling by the imposter Sheepsquatch to the present day. The tapes were lost all over Appalachia in his travels, and he elected to hire the Vault 76 dwellers to help recover them. He had caps to pay for the recovery, but he did not have the time to do it himself. The complete set of holotapes made it clear to the dwellers who he originally was, food for the Sheepsquatch, felled at the hands of his own creation, as he says, and made Aries trust them. With everything they had experienced together, Aries chose to let them decide what his own legacy would be. In an unusually serious turn of events, Aries requested them to decide whether he should reunite with his family or fade into obscurity. Aries realized it was a difficult burden to bear, but he was unable to decide, despite spending years thinking on the issue. Aries attributed his indecision to being a wild card, but would abide by any decision made by the dwellers. More specifically, Aries was conflicted on whether or not he should reveal his true identity to Carver Timmerman. Unbeknownst to Carver, Aries is his step-uncle. Shelley Van Lowe, Aries' sister, had married Deborah Timmerman after the Great War. Shelley and Deborah raised Carver together after his father, Gregory Timmerman, was presumed dead, having perished in the burning mine. Carver had heard stories of his Uncle Calvin from Shelley, but did not know that he was alive. Although he is excited to know that his Uncle Calvin is alive, he finds that difficult to balance, having already known Aries and being slightly freaked out by his eccentricities. However, Carver knows that Aries has a good heart and will continue to keep him safe on the caravan routes. Aries says he will also continue to spend time with Carver as he's a good kid, and the time they spend together is rewarding. He does not have the courage yet to face Shelley himself, though he will leave a letter with Carver to deliver to her. No matter how his story is resolved by the Vault 76 dwellers, they can thank him for finally explaining everything, to which Aries will reply that he is proud of himself for holding back on his tragic origin story for so long. The only unresolved question on Aries' mind is how exactly there was another imposter sheep-squatch in the Harper's Ferry tunnel. He had attempted to research Scoot Conroy's terminal at one point, but did not find anything definitive, and became terrified by the idea that the imposter sheep-squatch was repopulating. Aries speculates that the sheep-squatch mating rituals program could have, some way somehow, actually created a sheep-squatch imposterling. However, in typical Aries fashion, he playfully brushes off the notion when asked about it.